Good evening. Thanks for being here. I am reconvening the Commerce Committee, March 12th, 2019. We will be hearing House File 12. Before we do that, because this is the Commerce Committee and because this had, I believe, quite a lengthy hearing in its last committee stop, we want to be sure that we are focused on the purview of this committee, and I'm wondering if our nonpartisan staff would be willing to let us know what is under the purview of Commerce in this bill.
Certainly, Madam Chair and members. Commerce will be focusing on page 2, beginning on line 9. This is section 3. This adds a subdivision prohibiting misrepresentation, false or misleading statements, false promises, and that'll be coded in our consumer protection statutes.
Thank you for that. And so for everybody who is going to be presenting and testifying, I would encourage you to keep that in mind. My intention is to have public testimony run an hour. The bill author will have time to present his bill and present with his testifiers, and then we'll try to keep testimony limited to 2 minutes regarding consumer protection. And with that, I will move House File 12 be re-referred to the General Register. And Representative Cantrell, I understand you have an author's amendment. Is that correct? Or
yes, Madam Chair. We have an author's amendment. And essentially what it does is, after consultation with various stakeholders, as well as concerned entities such as the ACLU, we came to a consensus that this is an amendment that will help to really strengthen the intention of this bill and to ensure that that we clear up a little bit of the misconception around what would be still permissible and what would be impermissible should this bill be enacted into law.
Thank you, Representative Cantrell. I will move the A2 amendment. Is there any discussion to that amendment, to that author's amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Representative Cantrell, to your bill as amended.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commerce Committee. I have to first of all apologize for keeping you for another late night of hearings. But nonetheless, it is my pleasure to present to you this evening House File 12. A bill that will ban the widely discredited and demonstrably harmful practice of conversion therapy in the state of Minnesota. This bill fits squarely within our jurisdiction and our responsibility as a legislature to ensure that consumers are not exploited and harmed by fraudulent products, and that we protect the well-being of children. As Chair Halverson has indicated, the focus of our conversation and my testimony and the testimony of the testifiers shall be focused on the consumer protection component of this bill, which is Section 3. For the sake of clarity and expediency, I want to ensure that I give ample foundational clarification as to the impact and contents of this bill. Conversion therapy, as defined in Section 3 of this bill, means services or products that are intended to change an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity, including efforts to change behaviors and gender expression, or to eliminate or reduce sexual or romantic attractions or feelings towards individuals of the same gender. My testifiers, who are the brave survivors of conversion therapy, will outline the traumatic and unscientific practices to which they were subjected and the resultant lifelong detriment to their health and well-being these practices have inflicted upon them. Conversion therapy differs from bona fide therapy in numerous ways. Conversion therapy seeks to have a desired outcome of changing someone's sexuality or gender identity. Legitimate therapy is not conducted through this lens. Rather, legitimate therapy supports self-directed patient exploration of one's sexuality and gender identity in an unbiased manner that is supportive of the individual patient's journey of self-understanding. As a matter of preempting some misconceptions of this bill, let me be clear. If someone who thinks they may be gay, for example, visits a mental health professional and seeks assistance in navigating through their sexuality, that mental health professional is absolutely not mandated under this bill to only tell that patient that they are gay. Rather, that mental health professional, as all legitimate mental health professionals should do, will help a patient navigate through these questions in their own way, with the only desired outcome being that the patient is happy and healthy. Sexuality is not a choice, and it cannot be changed. and someone who portrays a service that they offer as being capable of such is deceiving both patients and their families. The legislature has long set the scope of practice for practitioners, and this bill does not undermine the patient-practitioner relationship. Rather, it seeks to affirm the integrity of the mental health field as a whole. Under this bill, people can still preach their religious views and understanding of sexuality, sell books, hold conferences for which tickets are sold, and guide people through prayer. This bill was specifically crafted and further refined to avoid conflict with religious liberties and the freedom of speech, foundational tenets of our republic that I hold dear. What this bill says is that in the state of Minnesota, we will not allow anyone, through deceptive means, to financially exploit the inner turmoil that so many people in our state experience. This bill also prohibits the subjection of children, many of whom cannot advocate for themselves and are faced with the threat of familial estrangement should they object to the practice of conversion therapy. The practice of conversion therapy has led directly to the suicides of countless people in our state and across our country, and has absolutely no place within the scope of the high-quality healthcare standard that we as Minnesotans take pride in and strive to continuously build upon. This bill will not only save lives, it will mitigate immense harm and prevent the exploitation of patients and their family in the state of Minnesota. I would like to underscore for everyone that conversion therapy, and for the purpose of clarifying semantics, the therapies that bear its likeness in every measurable way, though seek to draw a distinction from what is often popularized as being aspects of conversion therapy, but however remain essentially synonymous in the practices and biases employed, have been disavowed and discredited by every major medical organization and many prominent local healthcare entities. Letters of support for this bill, from some of which you will find included in your packets. It is my firm belief that these organizations and practitioners would not so fervently oppose this practice if it had any merit or appearance of efficacy in the practice of patient care. Nor do I assess that opposition to the practices employed in conversion therapy would garner such condemnation from these groups if these practices were not directly and demonstrably linked to severe harm inflicted upon people who are subjected to them. In closed, members, I would like to quote a very well-respected statesman. A suicide epidemic has touched all sectors of our society, but the problem is particularly acute among LGBT youth, who experience bullying and discrimination at every turn. In the most devastating cases, these teenagers even face estrangement from their own families. It is a call to action to Americans of all political stripes, regardless of where you stand on the cultural issues of today, whether you are a religious conservative, a secular liberal, or somewhere in between. We all have a special duty to each other. That duty is to treat one another with dignity and respect. It is not simply to tolerate, but to love. Members, let us be a part of the solution and take great heed of retired U.S. Senator Orrin Hatch's words. At this time, Madam Chair, I will turn the presentation over to my first testifier.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee. If you can please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Yeah, my name is Junior Avalos, and I'm a survivor of conversion therapy, and I'm here in support for HF12. Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee, thank you so much for taking time to hear me today. I went through conversion therapy because I was young and in a vulnerable state. When I was outed at the age of 10, rather than taking time to process what I was going through, I was immediately shunned by my family and faith community for the feelings that I was having. As I was growing up, I was being forced to sit with girls in my congregation to potentially stir up feelings. I was told I could not have physical contact with my male friends because that could risk me having emotional feelings for them. I was being told obscure lies to scare me about having feelings for other guys. They were trying to scare me straight. While all this was happening, I wasn't changing. I was still having a hidden relationship with other guys in my grade, and all of this self-hate that was being taught to me led me to risky behavior. At age 16, I had a breaking point when I was outed again. I was being threatened that I would be abandoned by my family. I was being told that if I didn't change, I was going to lose the people that I loved. And so in a desperate attempt to be loved by the people that I loved, I was willing to do whatever. I found a website that advertised that I could be cured of my same-sex attraction. They used language that said that they could cure me, that I could be fixed, that my same-sex attraction was just some inherent feeling that was fixable. It was a 2-week program and it cost me $600. I was 16, so I got a job working at a fast food restaurant, paying for it. And I mixed in the consent forms to attend with some paperwork for a dance intensive. I was also planning to attend so that my mom was unaware what I was doing. This camp gave me the impression that I could be fixed and that by attending, I could be accepted as a straight man. However, these people had no medical background. They manipulated me and others that attended this camp into thinking that there was trauma that was causing us to be gay, but this was a lie. It was mostly kids. We were ranging from the age of 13 to the age of 22. They used verbal and physical tactics, often abusive, to condition us to behave differently and use different mannerisms that they decided were straight mannerisms. One example of this was that we would have to practice of trying to act masculine by talking in a deep voice or positioning our bodies in specific ways. If we didn't, then we risked physical assault, and they beat us like dogs because of it. I left there hating myself even more, distrusting the entire world, and contemplating suicide. So I urge the committee to support this bill. This bill will protect an entire population from falling prey to the lies of the people that claim that they can fix something that doesn't need fixing. This bill would uplift our current consumer fraud laws and prevent people from trying to sell this snake oil and profiting from the pain and suffering of others. I urge you to pass this legislation. I know what good therapy looks like. I'm a person of faith now, and I know that I was born perfect, and the stuff that I went through shouldn't be allowed in this state. Because of this bill, it's not fair that any kid, and in any case, has to go through something barbaric and harmful practice. So I urge everyone in the committee to vote yes on this bill, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony and for sharing your story with us. Next, Dr. Margaret Chermoli. Welcome to the committee. Next up will be Sandra Simonson. We'll just make sure everybody's on deck so that we're ready to. Well, welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you. Chairperson Halverson and members of the committee, my name is Dr. Margaret Chermoli. I am past president of the Minnesota Psychological Association, a former member of the American Psychological Association Council of Representatives, which is its governing body, and a Minnesota licensed psychologist. I have a private practice in St. Paul, and I have taught doctoral level psychology courses on ethics and sexual orientation and gender identity. I'm here today to testify on behalf of the Minnesota Psychological Association, which supports the passage of House File 12 to ban the use of conversion therapy. MPA stands with many other mainstream mental health and medical associations which denounce conversion therapy and its correlates. These associations include, but are not limited to, the American Psychological Association, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Counseling Association, the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the National Association of Social Workers, and the American Psychoanalytic Association. In offering my testimony, I'm going to make 5 important points. I will also be talking about the American Psychological Association's stance because it is the same as Minnesota's, and I was a member of the American Psychological Association governing body when it developed policy statements about conversion therapy. The Minnesota Psychological Association, MPA, and the American Psychological Association, APA, oppose the use of conversion therapy because it violates our ethical standards, it is unlikely to work, is associated with harm and serious risks, fails to meet acceptable standards of care, and is discriminatory. Our ethical standards, number one, our ethical standards prohibit us from making false, deceptive, or fraudulent statements about the scientific or clinical basis for our services. Conversion therapy and its correlates, such as reparative therapy, are based on the false and deceptive premises, beliefs, and implications that same-sex attractions and romantic desires are signs of a mental disorder. The purpose of it is to change sexual orientation. And by 1974, both the American Psychological Association and the American Psychiatric Association, the primary arbiters of what constitutes mental illness in this country, concluded that homosexuality is not a psychological or developmental disorder. They based their decisions on a substantial body of scientific research that refuted those erroneous beliefs. This then begs the question, 45 years later, about conversion therapy. If something isn't broken, why are some people trying to fix it? Recipients of conversion therapy have also been led to believe that they will have miserable lives, unhealthy relationships, and won't be good parents. A solid body of reputable scientific research has refuted all those beliefs and assumptions. MPA and APA recognize that homosexuality is a normal variant of sexual orientation, that it is not a mental disorder, and that gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people can lead happy lives, have healthy relationships, and be good parents. Furthermore, APA policy, quote, advises parents, guardians, young people, and their families to avoid sexual orientation change efforts that portray homosexuality as a mental illness, unquote. Secondly, conversion therapy is unlikely to be successful. An APA task force charged with reviewing scientific research on efforts to change sexual orientation examined over 80 studies and concluded that evidence failed to warrant its use. Simply put, it wasn't likely to work. As a result of that, APA policy, quote, encourages mental health professionals to avoid misrepresenting the efficacy of sexual orientation change efforts by promoting or promising change in sexual orientation when providing assistance to individuals distressed by their own or other sexual orientation. Number 3, conversion therapy has been associated with harmful effects and serious risks. These effects and risks include depression, distress, shame, suicidality, increased substance use, high-risk sexual behaviors, increased self-hatred, and negative perceptions about same-sex attractions. I can attest to those harmful effects as a clinician who has worked with clients who have been through conversion therapy and been to the brink of suicide. Number 4, conversion therapy fails to meet acceptable standards of care. Licensed healthcare professionals are expected to act in accordance with professional standards of conduct and care in order to protect consumers. That means that we need to set aside our personal beliefs and that we don't get to say whatever we want when providing services to others. It is not an infringement on our freedom of speech to expect us to adhere to ethical and professional conduct and standards of care when providing healthcare services to the public. If conversion therapy isn't an acceptable standard of care, what is? Well, acceptable standards of care and appropriate therapeutic responses to people who experience distress related to their sexual orientation recognize that this distress is not related to sexual orientation per se and is due instead to external factors such as being a member of a marginalized and stigmatized group that is forced to deal with prejudice, discrimination, hate crimes, and family rejection. Acceptable standards of care offer affirmative, multicultural, competent approaches that help people understand stress, develop positive coping skills, nurture resilience, seek social support, and get accurate information about sexual orientation and same-sex relationships. These approaches have been shown to be effective, evidence-based practices that are associated with positive outcomes in therapy. Finally, conversion therapy is discriminatory. Our ethical standards, like the State of Minnesota Human Rights Act, oppose discrimination based on sexual orientation. No, not once has conversion therapy ever been used to change heterosexual feelings or behavior. Conversion therapy is only aimed at changing gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people. Hence, it is discriminatory. In conclusion, the Minnesota Psychological Association supports the passage of House File 12. We oppose conversion therapy because it is based on false and misleading beliefs and practices. It is unlikely to be successful, is associated with harm and serious risks, fails to meet acceptable standards of care, and is discriminatory. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Sandra Simonson, followed by Jack Richter.
Madam Chair, as they're coming up, just a quick question for
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we keeping the testimony to 2 minutes and just within Section 3? Is that the plan?
Representative O'Neill, that is the plan for public testimony. This is the author's presentation of
Thank
the
you.
bill. Thank you. Ms. Simonson, welcome to the committee.
Okay. Thank you.
Can state your name and proceed.
Yep. I'm Sandra K. Simonson, licensed independent clinical social worker, one of 4 ways to be licensed as a therapist in Minnesota. I have been licensed as a therapist for 25 plus years, a therapist who has lived and worked in South Central Minnesota, yes, that includes rural Minnesota, and also the outer metro suburbs. Plus, I have worked in Minneapolis and St. Paul. I was working in Minnesota before social workers were licensed to do mental health therapy in Minnesota. So I have seen 30 years of work by licensed professionals, educators, consumers, and legislators to continue to strengthen protections for mental health consumers in Minnesota. When licensed professional counselors became the fourth way to be licensed as a therapist in Minnesota, legislation was drafted so education, licensing, and continuing education would be uniform across all four professions. The expectation was accountability. What House File 12 does is continue the legacy of protections for mental health consumers in Minnesota. The protections sought in House File 12 reminds us that all of mental health loses integrity if one population group is not offered the same protections as fellow mental health consumers. Protections such as providers that are licensed and practice on a basis of professional ethics. The social work profession has the ethic that social workers obtain education about and seek to understand the nature of social diversity and oppression. This includes with respect to sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. The argument made by opposition that a therapist's First Amendment rights are infringed upon by this bill is in dangerous contradiction to professional licensing and ethics. The first ethical standard of social work is social workers' ethical responsibility to clients. The 4 licensing boards in Minnesota which license therapists also have standards of practice included in Minnesota statutes that prohibit discrimination. Finally, while out-of-state therapists have provided testimony to this legislature in opposition to House File 12, I ask that Minnesota licensed therapists have the influence with our own legislators to continue the legacy of protecting mental health consumers in Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up is Jack Richter. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you. My name is Jack Richter from Sartell, Minnesota. I want to thank the committee for generously listening to this bill and taking it into consideration. I am here as a 12-year survivor of the ex-gay movement. The previous people that spoke are licensed therapists. And I see this room is filled with people who have self-esteem, who have gotten to where they are because of that self-esteem. And I'm here to tell you that when a person is 21, 22 years old as I was, and I was sat down by my ex-sister, who I will never see again, and told that I was going to burn in hell for being a gay man and that I would never see my mom or my dad again, and that there was no chance of me to ever see them again, and I would burn in hell. But the Lord took away all her lesbian feelings, and she met her husband because of the Lord, and he could do the same for me. And then she gave me a whole bunch of propaganda from Outpost Ministries and Exodus International. I actually have the original propaganda from Outpost, and what that movement did to me was it completely destroyed any shred of self-esteem I might have had. At the age of 21, 22, I had never ever studied or looked at evolutionary biology. I had never studied or looked at human sexuality because being raised as a Catholic, we did not have that option. We were told what to think. And in the ex-gay movement, you are told what to think. And I am here also on behalf of Angela Emick, who was my dear friend who did suicide because of the ex-gay movement. I survived, and I vowed that I would be here tonight to tell you that this bill would save lives. because the ex-gay movement does not save lives. It blows apart and rips apart families. It does not save families, because when I was in the movement, it was for 12 years. So what happened when I was in the movement was men would actually leave their gay partner who they had been with for years and years and years. And after they left their partner, they would marry a woman. I was in it that long. And then they would cheat on their wife with the ex-partner. Now, is that integrity? Is that honesty? Is that ethics? Is that humanity? Is that living? I just ask you all that. I'll never see my friend Angela again. And the reason why I don't believe I'll see her again is because not only did the ex-gay movement take away my family, blow it apart, it took away any shred of chance at an operatic career, because I was going for a career in opera, but what it took away my belief in a God. I had to research atheism, and I found all the arguments for that. So what I'm saying to all of you who are religious folk here, and I say this with respect, if you go against this bill and you choose to present an ex-gay idealship to your children, you could be driving them away from the very religion that you promote. And they could research and research and do the research and research their way right out of faith, period, into atheism. Because what a child at 22 years old needs is love. They need love and acceptance and rationality. This is a book called Prayers for Bobby. I urge every one of you to see this in this room. It was a movie made into a movie with Sigourney Weaver. It's the real life of a boy whose mother was relentless on telling him that he needed to become straight, and she wrote Bible verses, and it wasn't good enough, and he was never good enough for her, so he threw himself over a bridge in front of an oncoming semi-truck and killed himself. And what did the mother do after that? She became one of the biggest leading ex-gay, pro-gay proponents of Lambda. And she went around speaking because she has to live every day with the feeling that she was the one to cause her son to kill himself. This book, Boy Erased, was just made into a movie starring, Nicole Kidman and Russell Crowe. It was just in theaters in November. I urge you, please, before you make a decision on this bill, please just watch these movies, because they're real stories. This boy was in the ex-gay movement, as I was. I've never seen anybody change their orientation in the ex-gay movement. To this day, I was in the movement for 12 years. I dream about men. I don't dream about women. I never have once. It's not changeable. Orientation is not changeable. I have pictures of Angela if anybody would like to see any of them. And I love you, Angela, and I know I won't see you anymore. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, and I'm sorry about the loss of your friends. That concludes the author's presentation. We will move to public testimony. Public testimony will take as many people as signed up for an hour, and asking you all to keep time to 2 minutes apiece. The first, you can watch Amy for timing. She's got signs, so it's hard to know. Time up there goes fast. So the first testifier on the list is Nate Oilo, followed by Emma McBride. And if you guys can all kind of cue, that way we'll make sure we can get as many people as possible. Thank you. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record and proceed.
My name is Nate Oilo, Nathan Oilo. Good morning, or good evening. This was supposed to be earlier. Good evening, Madam Chair and members. My name is Nathan Oilo, and I oppose this bill. As an adolescent, I experienced same-sex attractions. Knowing that homosexual practice was inconsistent with my religious faith, I chose to explore my options with the help of qualified mental health professionals and pastoral caregivers. I was not forced, I was not coerced, I was not abused. In fact, I was honored and loved, and that I was given the power of choice and the dignity to think for myself. I do want to add that I went through Outpost Ministries programming and am very thankful for my experience there. In addition to professional and pastoral help, I also benefited from many books and curricula and conferences that supported my desire to bring my same-sex attractions into agreement with my religious faith. 20 years later, I still look back fondly on all the resources that were available to me, all of which set me up for the life that I wanted. Furthermore, as a pastor, I've worked with many young people over the past 20 years who are questioning their sexual orientation or gender identity, and like me, wanting to bring their sexual orientation and gender identity into agreement with their faith. These young people were given the same love, honor, and dignity afforded me in my youth, the power of choice and the dignity to think for themselves. In my work as a pastor, and I hope one day to put my story in book form. Under this bill, I could be prosecuted for fraud if I was thought to be promoting conversion therapy, which is vaguely defined. If someone holds a different view than me on gender identity and sexuality and interpreted my statements to be misleading, my work would be considered consumer fraud. I am not a fraud. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
I also have testimonies from others who testified at the last hearing. I would love for you to read them and consider them.
You can, one of our pages will pick that up and pass it out. Emma McBride, followed by Bob Robbie.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Emma McBride, and I work in policy and legislative affairs at Outfront Minnesota, which is the state's largest LGBTQ advocacy org. I'm here today because of the sheer bravery of survivors of conversion therapy who have come forward to share their stories in hopes that nobody goes through the same kind of trauma that they have. The members of this committee have been given a copy of an Ozane Foundation study, and I'd like to highlight the most important findings, which show that conversion therapy is ineffective at its purpose, but very effective at leading to mental health issues, including suicide. These distressing findings should be enough on their own to put a stop to this practice. The study was overseen by an influential advisory board consisting of some of the most senior statistical, religious, and healthcare professionals in the UK. Of the people who experienced conversion therapy, over half said they experienced mental health issues following attempts to change, and nearly half stated that they had found it hard to accept themselves for who they are following attempts to change. Of those who suffered mental health issues, nearly 1/3 said they attempted suicide, while over 2/3 said they had suicidal thoughts. I will repeat that. Over 2/3 said they had suicidal thoughts following conversion therapy. Less than 1/3 said that they had gone on to lead a happy and fulfilled life. Only a small minority of respondents sought advice from actual National Health Service or private medical professionals, meaning that a vast majority of respondents who went through efforts to change their sexuality did so with unlicensed providers. They were sold pseudoscience, harmful services for something that is not a disease. Providers, unlicensed and licensed, are ignoring the significant research that shows the extent of harm caused by conversion therapy, research that is backed up by every single major medical association and the UN, who have likened this to torture. I urge you to use your vote to protect people from dangerous and discredited conversion therapy practices. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Bob Robbie, followed by Ben Feist. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Bob Roby, R-O-B-Y. I'm a family law case evaluator, experienced as a guardian ad litem. I also advise legal clients who are therapists and mental health professionals. I work weekly with cases where children are in therapy. This is a very real in the trenches issue for me. I'm a person of faith, and I guess to me that means that I know that God loves us as we are, not as we should be. That's what I know. But I'm invested in this issue because we can't allow this issue to continue to polarize us. It's not good for anybody, especially kids. Especially kids. They get caught in the middle of polarization in our culture, in our families. I have two concerns about this bill, and I want to focus on section 3, and my comments do so as well. I noticed that my written submission was not out here tonight behind me, so I guess it's not available for people unless there's copies offered at the end. But my two points of concern about this bill, one is the definition of conversion therapy itself. My concern is that no one goes to therapy so they can stay the same. No one goes to therapy so they can stay the same. In the real world, people go so they can change something. They want change in their life. Now, if people are allowed to change, then the law, I don't think, has any business preferring one gender identity over another. And the concern here is the intrusion into the therapist-patient relationship, and trying to create a one-way street there is a problem. Kids don't need this fight brought into their therapy sessions, and I hope that this will be reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. And for members' information, the handout that Mr. Roby referenced is in your packets. It says Minnesota Mediation Services, LLC at the top, so you can find that. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record and proceed.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Ben Feist. I'm the Legislative Director for the ACLU of Minnesota. And I'm here today in support of this bill. This is good policy for Minnesota. And I was really asked to try to take a look at this from a constitutional perspective. It's not often that I get to come on this side. I'm usually in front of this body saying for sure this is unconstitutional. But after doing my research here, I can say that this certainly fits as a reasonable prohibition. So generally speaking, bills like this that are limited to the provision of conversion therapy services don't raise free speech issues. Now, although a physician's professional communication is constitutionally protected, we also know under a long series of case law that it may be reasonably restricted if the regulation is consistent with the norms of medical practice. We've already heard from experts in the field today that a prohibition on this practice makes sense from those who are practitioners. So specifically to the consumer protection piece, I'll also add that when it's okay to prohibit conversion therapy for profit, it also makes sense to prohibit offers to sell conversion therapy. So I think we are well within the scope of adding this provision to Minnesota's consumer protection statutes. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. David Kirby, followed by Will Sampson Bernstrom. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chair and representatives. My name is Dr. David Kirby. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist who's been in practice in the state of Minnesota for 25 years. I want you to imagine that you are a consumer entering a surgical center for a surgery you believe will save your life. You have received thousands of substantiated health claims from others saying that it saved their lives. No one has told you to go, not even your parents. The surgeon sighs and tells you that a small clinic was shut down because unlicensed non-professionals had been using switchblades, conversion therapy, for their surgeries. You say, good, I'm glad they shut it down. That practice sounds very harmful. But why are you telling me this? The surgeon replies that as a result of the 5% of surgeries being done with the switchblades, all knives have been banned across the state, even scalpels used by professional surgeons. This is therapy that is heterosexual affirmative. She then tells you if she performs the surgery you are pleading for, her healthcare efforts will be prosecuted as a criminal act. As you are leaving the surgical center depressed, another doctor grabs you by the arm and announces that some scalpels have not been banned. There's an exception. Scalpels are freely available for surgeries if they are used in a manner mandated by the government for gay affirmative therapy. HF 12 begins with the objective of protecting one minority from conversion therapy. Fine and good. But then the bill discriminates against another minority by dictating that all individuals with same-sex attraction are only allowed to receive gay affirmative therapy. Heterosexual affirmative therapy, even at your request, is banned. At a very minimum, this bill discriminates against children who are struggling with unwanted SSA because they were sexually abused, even by same-sex adults. So my final point here is I oppose this bill because it discriminates against the health care of some of our children in this state. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Will Sampson Bernstrom, followed by Michael Newland. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Will Sampson Bernstrom. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am a faith leader at Apple Valley Community of Christ, and I am a survivor of conversion therapy. From 2006 to 2010, I participated in counseling sessions across Alabama, Northwest Florida, and participated in a weekend Exodus International conference in Memphis, Tennessee. Sometimes I'd sit with a parent while a counselor tried to identify a non-existent trauma that obviously made me gay. When my parents weren't present, the blame would be shifted to them. I was told that some internalized anger or resentment towards them might unlock the secret to my sickness. In March 2009, after living my worst nightmare of being publicly outed, I offered to return to therapy in order to stay in my private Christian school. Although I would go to a licensed therapist for over a year, I was still kicked out of my school for being told that I was a threat to the other students. After being told by my community that I was a threat that needed to be protected from, and having resisted opportunities to change, I allowed a therapist week after week to tamper with my memories. The details are traumatic, and there are moments in my life that when I reflect on, I only see a bright light. I liken it to a DVR. Someone went through with a remote and deleted files that they didn't think that I needed anymore. As for the long-term effects, I suffer from depression, anxiety, PTSD, and suicidal ideation. These interfere with my everyday life. Imagine living your life after spending crucial years of development, being told that you were living a sin that hurts and threatens others, a sin that you can erase if you are just more of a man or erase key memories. I would urge the committee to please support this bill and stand up for the survivors of this torturous practice.
Thank you for your testimony. Michael Newland, followed by Elisa Tamet. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name and proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Michael Newland. At the age of 11 or 12, I realized I was attracted exclusively to the same sex. This was quite problematic for me because it was in conflict with how my faith informed me to live out my sexuality. And for me, my faith was much more important than embracing a sexual identity at odds with my faith. I believed my sexual orientation could change, but I was incapable of bringing that about on my own. I was miserable and increasingly engaging in self-destructive behaviors and thought patterns. I needed help in reconciling my faith and my sexuality and in resolving deep emotional issues. And so at the age of 17, I sought out help in reconciling that conflict. I paid for services consisting primarily of talk therapy and spiritual guidance. I also purchased books and admission to events that talked about faith and sexuality, including the possibility of sexual orientation change. These resources encouraged me to explore issues in my life that may have contributed to the development of same-sex attractions. These resources helped me to become confident in and be at peace with who I am, even in the midst of having same-sex attractions. As I worked through a myriad of issues, my sexual attractions toward men gradually diminished. I no longer identify as same-sex attracted. In fact, I am happily married to a woman and am genuinely attracted to her. The resources I had access to helped make all of this possible and contributed to a holistic, positive life change. I am concerned that this legislation would make it difficult for others to explore the option of sexual orientation change in accordance with their faith and core values. The resources that helped me were not false or misleading. But under this bill, someone who has a differing viewpoint of gender and sexuality could categorize them as misleading and sue for consumer fraud. It is not the government's place to prohibit people from pursuing help or from providing resources to help others in accordance with their core values when it comes to such intimate matters of faith and conscience. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Elisa Tomet, followed by Jason Knoll. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record and proceed.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name is Dr. Elisa Tomet. I am a doctor of public health with a Master of Science degree in counseling psychology. However, I speak to you today as a mother. I am a proud Christian mother of a young lesbian woman, and I am a Minnesota mama bear. Mama bears are mothers of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer children who love and fight to protect our own and every other child, no matter where they find themselves on the sexuality or gender identity spectrums. We fight to protect our kids just as fiercely as a mother bear protects her cubs from ignorance, hate, violence, social injustice, and abuse, which are often perpetuated by misguided laws and public policy. I've been asked here today to read a letter on behalf of the parents of a young man who survived conversion therapy, but not without significant emotional and financial cost to the family. These parents were deceived by false, misleading, and fraudulent statements and guarantees that their child could be cured from homosexuality through conversion therapy. A Minnesota father writes, "Dear Madam Chair and the Minnesota House Commerce Committee, my name is David Bernstrom. I am a resident of Becker, Minnesota, and the father of Will Samson Bernstrom, who previously testified. When our son came out as gay, his mother and I were ignorant as to the hows, whys, and whats of homosexuality and decided to meet with a therapist. Our initial meeting was the only meeting that we were allowed to attend together with our son, even though he was a minor. This therapist theory was that our son's homosexuality was the result of a sexual assault that had occurred earlier in his life and that identifying this life-altering event would lead to our son's conversion. The possibility that our son had been sexually abused was alone reason enough to continue seeking treatment for him. This therapist was not a doctor, so we continued looking for more legitimate therapists. Another therapist recommended attending the Exodus International Seminar in Nashville, Tennessee, and we traveled to Nashville to endure another weekend of sessions with our son meeting with a counselor without the parents being in attendance. Neither therapist nor Exodus International personnel showed us any studies that proved conversion therapy was a legitimate scientific practice or that traumatic events lead to homosexuality. Out of desperation to help our son, we blindly trusted their professional credentials.
Dr. Tomet, I'm afraid that that's the 2 minutes that you have. However, if you would like to submit that written testimony to the committee, you're welcome to, and we will distribute it to community members as well.
Okay, we thank you. And on behalf of the Minnesota Mama Bears and all parents of LGBT plus kids for considering this measure.
Thank you for your testimony. Jason Knoll, followed by Pastor Brennan Blue. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record and proceed.
My name is Jason Knoll. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jason Knoll. I already said that, but I oppose this bill. I am concerned that this bill will take away the books, conferences, and counseling services that were vital to me in overcoming unwanted same-sex attractions. As an adolescent and young adult, I struggled with SSA. My desire was to eventually be married to a woman, but I didn't know if there was any help for me. In 2002, I was driving home from work late at night, listening to Christian radio when I heard a man give his testimony about walking away from homosexuality and how there were many other people who had done the same. This was the message I had been waiting for most of my life. As soon as I got home that night, I went online and began looking at all the resources, such as ministries, books, and conferences that were available to help someone like me. I called and set up counseling appointments with amazing, wonderful people who were always kind, supportive, and professional. I purchased books authored by people like Dr. Elizabeth Moberly, Leanne Payne, Dr. Joseph Nicolosi, and many others. Their psychological and spiritual insights taught me the reasons behind my SSA and how to get those needs met in healthy ways. I attended multiple conferences where I got to hear doctors, psychologists, pastors, and lay people speak on the myriad of issues associated with SSA. During these conferences, I received prayer counseling, attended support groups, and purchased additional resources such as books, CDs, DVDs, and MP3s. I also received great encouragement from hearing personal testimonies of others who walked away from homosexuality and SSA. Through these valuable resources, I was able to realize my goal to live as a man who is now secure in my heterosexuality and has been married to my beautiful wife for over 8 years. Under the expansive language of this bill, resources like the ones that helped me could be interpreted as misleading. Please do not pass this bill or take away the freedom of choice for others like me. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Pastor Brennan Blue, followed by Emily Zinos. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name and proceed.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Reverend Brendan Blue. I'm the senior pastor at St. Luke Presbyterian Church in Minnetonka. I am here today on behalf of my congregation and the over 14,000 members of the Presbytery of the Twin Cities, both of whom have publicly endorsed HF 12. One of the things that I love about my faith tradition is the theological conviction that all people are made beautifully and purposely in the image of God. All people, regardless of the color of your skin, who you're attracted to, all people are made beautifully in the image of God. In the 8 years of my professional ministry, unfortunately, I found that time and time again, this great hope has been excluded and withheld from members of the LGBTQ community by not only the church, but by the state as well. I have witnessed firsthand in pastoral care and counseling sessions how the harmful, manipulative messaging of conversion therapies wounds people to the core, both spiritually and emotionally. I have wept and I have prayed with friends and colleagues who have been scarred for life by this practice. We have heard tonight and will continue to hear arguments about the intention and hopes of conversion therapy. I asked us to recognize that regardless of whatever the intent or theology of the practice may be, its impact is overwhelmingly akin to a psychological hate crime. Madam Chair, I submit that this is not who we are as a state, and that this is not what the majority of our faith communities want. Conversion therapies are manipulative and fraudulent. As Minnesotans, we are committed to public health, to the civic good, and to the strength of the diversity of our identities. And so as a citizen, a faith leader, and a representative of my denomination, I ask that you endorse HF 12 and protect our fellow Minnesotans to ensure that our great state offers a chance for all people to grow and flourish, each as they are, valuable citizens and beloved children of God. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, Emily Zinos, followed by Jory Miller. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Emily Zinos. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm a founding member of Hands Across the Aisle, which is a global multi-partisan women's coalition. We urge the committee to oppose House File 12. Hands Across the Aisle members come from across the political spectrum, but though we disagree on a multitude of issues, our coalition collectively rejects the non-scientific notion that a child could be born in the wrong body. We believe that there is no such thing as a personality trait that requires drastic medical intervention. Our coalition looks forward to organizing ticketed events here in Minnesota, like conferences and panel discussions, and selling books and other educational materials that will challenge the notion that children need to undergo medical transition because of the toys they play with or the clothes that they want to wear. We want you to hear from researchers who have found that most trans-identified youth grow up to accept their sexual identity as male or female, and many of them are same-sex attracted. We want to give this stage to the mothers who can't find a therapist who will help their child learn to love their body as it is because they live in states with so-called conversion therapy bans. And we want the public to hear from the young women who have undergone cosmetic double mastectomies in high school because no one bothered to tell them it's okay to be a tomboy. If House File 12 becomes law, would selling tickets to events like these or paying the speakers expose our organization to charges of fraud? Would we be sued for consumer fraud under Section 3 of House File 12 because the state of Minnesota interprets those viewpoints as false or misleading or as intending to change a person's gender identity? This proposed legislation would stifle one of our coalition's key goals, a goal that every Minnesota legislator should welcome, which is to encourage our culture to recognize that every child is born in exactly the right body. Please oppose House File 12. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Jory Miller, followed by Fred Hines. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name and proceed. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jory Miller. I'm the son of third-generation North Dakota farmers. I had a beautiful childhood filled with love and compassion. However, when I was 15, my parents found photos of male models in my room. From a friend of a friend, they were referred to a pastor in a First Presbyterian church who claimed he had a solution to what others saw as a problem. Every Tuesday for about a year, I was sent to talk to this pastor, who also has a doctorate in psychology, about what they told me was for a porn addiction. He administered a modified version of Exodus International to cure my SSA, or same-sex attraction, and this fraudulent practice was mental torture. He consistently probed for sexual trauma, and I've never been abused. He disclosed inappropriate details about himself in an attempt to relate to a porn addiction I did not have. I was constantly manipulated into believing I had the power to change what he saw as perversions and that my sexuality was an illness. For a while, I attempted to buy in and believe those so-called treatments. I felt intense shame and guilt, and if I did not do everything I could to fix myself, no one around me would love me, and I completely failed my family. As the tools I was given to fix my sinful thoughts and behavior constantly ceased to cure me, I turned towards self-harm to fix everything wrong with me. I would stare at the men's section of a JCPenney catalog and grab an electric fence, praying I could hurt these thoughts out of my head. I had suicidal ideation during the Exodus International-based sessions and for quite a while after my time with this pastor. Conversion therapy has had harmful and long-term effects on my mental health, my personal relationships, and my journey to self-love. These practices were a complete fraud with nothing but negative outcomes. Today, I do not hate my parents, for they were also tricked by the church and the culture of rural America that there was a solution to cure their child of homosexuality and the struggles and embarrassment that my identity would bring. My hope is that no additional children will endure this mental abuse and feel as hopeless as I have. Conversion therapy does not work, and these services must end in Minnesota.
Thank you for your testimony. Fred Hines, followed by Johann Baumeister. Welcome to the committee. You may state your name and proceed.
My name is Reverend Frederick Hintz. I serve as the public policy advocate for the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod and its roughly 180,000 members across the state of Minnesota. I have come to express our opposition to this bill. We oppose it, first of all, because we believe it attempts to use the anti-fraud statutes of this state in an inappropriate and unnecessary manner. It strikes us as odd that these particular advisory services are being singled out for special consideration when there is little evidence to indicate that this type of abuse occurs with any inordinate frequency, or that it has caused any significant financial harm. At the heart of our objection to this bill, however, are two more profound concerns. The first of these relates to our firm conviction that this legislation amounts to a official and impermissible state endorsement of a particular worldview, a religious worldview, a worldview that rejects the understanding that human beings and their sexuality are part of a created order. Since the state is constitutionally obligated to take a position of neutrality when it comes to such religious matters, we believe it is entirely inappropriate for the state to make such an endorsement, which it seems to do in this legislation. Secondly, as a Christian church, we are concerned that this legislation will cause some of our fellow citizens to suffer unnecessarily because they will be deprived of the resources they need to pursue the vision of the good life, which for some means seeking relief from undesired same-sex attractions and deeply troubling gender dysphoria. Ultimately, it is out of concern for the welfare of our neighbor that we feel this proposal is ill-considered and will in fact cause much suffering. In fact, the same personal autonomy that is invoked by so many who would support this legislation is precisely the autonomy that would be denied to those who voluntarily seek this kind of assistance. Members of the committee, I urge you to reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Johann Baumeister, followed by Dale Witherington. And I appreciate everybody for correcting my pronunciations of your name, so my apologies. Welcome.
Thank you. You got mine right.
Thank you.
My name is Johann Baumeister. I've been, well, we used to call it different for as long as I can remember, and I didn't want to be for a very long time. I had loving and devoted parents who raised me in accord with their Lutheran faith, and one of the beliefs of our faith was that being gay was a moral failing and a terrible sin. And as a very young child, I knew I was different for as long as I can remember. I also knew that no matter how hard I tried, I could not change. My soul bears the scars of a terrible conflict between that belief and the knowledge that I did not choose to be gay and could not change. It wasn't until I joined the military that a chaplain told me that God doesn't make mistakes and that I was who I was meant to be and that I was meant to fail in my prior attempts to change. So I waited to come out until I had left my parents' home at the age of 19. I waited because I was no longer living at home and because I was safe. I knew that my home wouldn't be taken out from under me or I wouldn't be threatened with the loss of my family and my home if I didn't submit to conversion therapy. And yet I do not bear my parents any ill will for their demand that I submit to this therapy because they were misled. My mother was told that it was her failing because she was too strong of a woman, too dominant. And I ask you if you've heard that criticism before too. I don't imagine it feels good. My dad was told that it was because he wasn't a good enough protector because I suffered abuse as a child, which I didn't. The men in this room have probably felt the shame of failing their families in the past. No one is perfect. But my dad didn't deserve to feel that way. I've been through therapy for depression and anxiety. I have coping skills now. I am a productive member of society. But conversion therapy would have robbed me of that. Conversion therapy would have endangered me. And it did damage my relationship with my family, and it damaged them. I urge you to vote against this bill.
Thank you for your testimony.
Sorry, in support of this bill.
And thank you for your clarification. Dale Witherington, followed by Reverend Dan Adolphson. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Reverend Dale Witherington. I'm the Chief Steward of Restore Minnesota. Within our affiliated network are more than 3,000 Minnesota churches and hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans from all walks of life. I'm writing hoping that you won't make a decision tonight that would unjustly cause me and others in our network to be criminally charged with consumer fraud, which would potentially send many of us to jail because of the current language in Section 3 of HF 12. None of us would support the kind of conversion therapy that we're hearing about tonight. It's the language that is contentious. Like many others, I travel the state of Minnesota speaking to religious, civic, and business groups about a message of hope, restoration for people who are feeling lost, hurting, and broken. At times, those feelings will impact every one of us and others whom we love, regardless of their race, color, their creed, or their sexual orientation. At those times when many of us feel lost, broken, and hurt, we need compassionate help. For some Minnesotans, that means seeking help through workshops, ticketed events, and the purchase of books, pamphlets, audios, and other resources that empower us to live according to the dictates of our conscience. Some Minnesotans will choose to have help in living the LGBTQ lifestyle. They are protected by law to do so. Other Minnesotans will choose help to live according to their biological sex at birth, even if they are dealing with same-sex attraction. HF 12 will deny that second group the right to seek help according to the way they wish to live, according to the dictates of their conscience. Shouldn't all Minnesotans have right and access to people and resources that can help them live the lives according to their wants, needs, and desires? HF 12 will deny many pastors, teachers, and public speakers the right to help these people. Please protect the rights of all Minnesotans. This bill is not about so-called conversion therapy. It is about stopping professionals from bringing the exact help that the Minnesotans are requesting. It is about government overreach. Government and politicians should not dictate nor restrict the rights of Minnesotans
You've reached the
to
end time,
receive
so
their
please
help
wrap up. Thank
that they
you.
choose. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Dan Adolphson, and followed by Sue Halverson. Welcome to the committee. Please correct my pronunciation.
You got it right the second time. Good evening, Madam Chair and honored members of the committee. I am Reverend Daniel Adolphson, Associate Pastor at First Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the Whittier neighborhood of Minneapolis, a member of the Upper Midwest region of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, past moderator of Disciples LGBTQ+ Alliance, and a proud out gay man called by God to serve God's people. At First Christian Church, we are deeply involved in supporting LGBTQ youth in the Twin Cities, whether it be partnerships with a variety of organizations or through having a public presence at the Twin Cities Pride Festival each June. For many years, we were looked at with suspicion, a church that supports queer youth and their families. After hearing that statement one time too many, I started asking questions. I asked a lot of questions, and the stories I heard were heartbreaking and had the same theme. Over and over again, I heard from queer youth or their families about interactions with faith communities that in the moment when they should have heard the words, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made and beautiful as you are," instead they were told they were broken, they were damaged goods that needed to be fixed, and oh, by the way, we've got just the repair ticket for you. The repair promise of conversion therapy endangers those families sometimes irreparably. It also harms and defrauds young adults who pay thousands of dollars for treatments with no scientific credibility. LGBTQ youth who'd experienced conversion therapy are 8.4 times more likely to attempt suicide, experience depression, isolation, and substance abuse. I know firsthand the damage a person being told again and again by a faith community that they are less than can do to a person's self-worth and self-esteem, as I spent many years in reparative counseling myself, trying to have something repaired that didn't need fixing in the first place. As faith leaders, we are called to minister to people in ways that protect them from harm. Madam Chair and members of this committee, I ask you to support House File 12 as it protects our LGBTQ citizens and their families from a practice that simply cannot deliver of the promise it makes. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Sue Halverson, followed by Pastor Dwayne Davis. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name and proceed.
I'm Sue Halverson, and I'm a concerned citizen. And thank you for having me here today. I'm here not to give my own personal testimony, but I brought a packet that's put out by the National Task Force for Therapeutic Equality. And I love this packet. It's a little longer, but it's organized so well that it's got 10 bullet points why they oppose this bill. And then if you want more information, you can go directly to that portion of the document to find. It's got court case rulings, professional organization statements, and scientific studies. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Halverson. And for members' reference, there is a stapled packet in your packet that bears Ms. Halverson's name. So you should be able to find that. Okay. Oh, it sounds like we don't have Pastor Davis. We'll just move on to we'll move on to Kathleen Niediger, followed by Dexter Hansen. And I don't see Kathleen. Mr. Hansen is coming down, followed by Roger Sanchez. No. Somebody, that was a trick. Let's see. Roger Sanchez? Got one. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record and proceed.
My name is Roger Sanchez. I'm a resident here in Minnesota and registered voter. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I was born into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormon Church. At the age of 14, I was confronted by my father about being gay. Since it was against my religion, I denied it. A few years later, I acknowledged my sexual orientation. and was told it could be cured. My church bishop recommended conversion therapy. Being young, I did not know much and did not have an extensive knowledge in regards to the matter. So like a lamb to the slaughter, I consented. What followed were years of torment and mental torture. I met with a therapist who tried to rewire me. I hated myself, and I was suffering in quiet desperation. It wasn't until, excuse me, it wasn't until I confided in a close friend who gave me a lifeline. I was connected with a counselor and therapist who affirmed that there was nothing wrong with me. It took years to embrace and love myself. My family is learning and has embraced me. However, I consider myself as one of the lucky ones because many do not make it due to substance abuse and suicide. There are many currently suffering in quiet desperation. If we can avoid any hurt, let's do it. Please support HF 12. And I would also note that a similar bill was presented in Utah and the LDS Church supported it, that they, it doesn't infringe on religious freedom. And also recently, a conversion therapist in Utah who practiced conversion therapy for over 20 years came out as gay and has denounced the practice.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Mara Glupka. And after this final testifier, this is the last testifier who signed up. We do still have a few minutes left of public testimony, so if people want to let the committee page know that you'd like to testify, we can take some additional public testimony. The committee page is right over there, Kyle, just so you know. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Mara Glupka. And thank you for this opportunity to speak. I live in Richfield currently, but I'm from Winona. I'm transgender. My awareness of that goes back to the age of 3 or 4. And by 4, I was told that I was a boy and that's it. At 15, my mother discovered a small collection of things that led to a very uncomfortable conversation with my parents where I explained that I couldn't make wishing that I was a girl go away. So they arranged for some help with counseling sessions at Catholic Charities. I knew the score going into counseling. I had zero choice but to go, and I was to come out cured. I played along with my counselor, and my counselor offered up that most people go through phases like this, and it just goes away. I jumped all over that and began to earnestly assert that it was just a phase and didn't need any more help, just to get out of it. This is the way I remembered it for most of my life. It was tough me outsmarting them. 6 years ago, my transgender therapist used a relaxation technique for reviewing parts of my life. We got to the Catholic Charities event, and I fell apart. I now realize that just the act of putting someone like me into a program designed to fix how I was, how I am, is a cruel and painful rejection. Suicidal thoughts were a regular visitor after Catholic Charities. An article in Psychology Today, dated November 14th last year, said that LGBTQ youth aged 13 to 19 were 3 times more likely to attempt suicide if their parents tried to cure them, and 5 times more likely if a religious leader or a licensed therapist was hired to cure them. And Dr. Robert Spitzer, who is the consensus founder of conversion therapy, wrote an apology to the LGBTQ community back in 2012 for all the harm that he caused. I urge you to pass this bill and stop hurting kids.
Thank you for your testimony. If you have checked in with the page for additional public testimony, please come forward. Welcome to the committee. We'll continue with the same rules that we are going to stick to 2 minutes per testifier and try to stay to Section 3 of the bill about advertising sales and misrepresentation of conversion therapy. Welcome. State your name and proceed.
I'm Joshua Kavanaugh, and thank you very much, Hunter, for bringing up this topic. Definitely a very important topic. And I thought that it would be worthwhile to talk about some of the things that go on in bona fide conversion therapy. I had both professional therapy as well as therapy offered by pastors. So I really appreciated the different things that I learned, and I'm a father of one with my wife who's here today with me, and I very much appreciate her. I'll state that I was strongly attracted to men before I initiated therapy, and that's not an issue for me. And by that, I would say that like it's not something that's even on my radar. Like most months, like. And so that's an outcome, right? And so what did it look like? It looked like learning how to be independent, how to appreciate who I was. It looked like learning what love looked like. It looked like learning how to be the social person that I was created to be, how to truly connect with friends. And I am absolutely in appreciation for the people who worked with me on that, for my many good friends, and then for the mentors and health therapists who did this with me. And again, thank you so much for bringing up this topic, Hunter.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there another testifier who has checked in with the page? Welcome to the committee. You can. Thank you. You can state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Peggy Doherty from St. Paul, and I'm asking you today to oppose House File 12. I lived in a same-sex relationship for 18 years of my life and was in therapy on and off that entire time. I struggled with depression, anxiety, which I took medication for, and suicidal thoughts. When I was seeking therapists, I wanted to find one that would encourage me and empower me, and someone that would help me to wrestle with my thoughts and my fears. I was not looking for someone who wanted to change me, but someone who would help me know myself. Over the years, I saw a lesbian therapist who changed my life. She didn't push an agenda on me. She didn't tell me I was a lesbian just because I experienced same-sex attractions. Instead, she let me talk about my struggles of unwanted same-sex attractions freely. She allowed me to ask questions, and she helped me to dig deep into how my life experiences were affecting my thoughts and feelings. My therapist had the freedom to allow me to set my own goals, and that's why I no longer identify as a lesbian. I no longer take depression or anxiety medication, and I live a very healthy and satisfying life. House File 12 would put a political agenda ahead of people like me. We live in a culture today that allows men and women to change their bodies according to their genders and how they identify. Why shouldn't we be allowed to change our minds? Please vote no on this bill. Our kids deserve it.
Thank you for your testimony. Whoever signed up next. Oh, thank you. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name and proceed with your testimony, and you can watch Amy for time. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is David Hall. I live in Hudson, Wisconsin, but I was a longtime resident of Robbinsdale, Minnesota. I grew up in St. Cloud, and I benefited extremely from the ministry of Outpost Ministries and from professional therapy regarding this bill. What I found very interesting in this discussion tonight and the discussion the previous committee was the language that Representative Hunter Cantrell has said that this is not directed towards religious organizations. But the only testimony that we have heard from those encouraging the support of this bill have been from people who have unfortunately received very bad religious therapy, very bad religious advice, and very bad religious direction. So what is this bill meant to accomplish, if not the silencing of someone's deeply held religious beliefs? We have not heard from testimonies of bad therapists. And if it were so that there were, they would have gone to the professional organizations that support this bill. That seems like a contradiction to me. That seems to me that those, if there were such cases, would go first to those professional bodies and not waste the time of this honored and hallowed organization. I oppose this bill because it doesn't make any sense for this bill to be even considered, even be written. It seems to me that there's nothing good that will come of this bill. And as we've seen, it's created quite a bit of contention already in our state, in this state, and across the nation. And so I thoroughly and vehemently oppose this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record and proceed.
My name is Matthew Sullivan, and I'm currently pursuing a doctorate of veterinary medicine, a master's of public health, and a certificate of diversity and equity through the University of Minnesota and the Purdue University. I felt called to come down here right now in support of this bill. I was raised as a Catholic and still identify as a Catholic. And through the church that I grew up in, I had a lot of backlash as coming out as a gay individual at the age of 14. I still, to this day, have dreams of being a heterosexual man, but I know from hearing stories and doing my research on conversion therapy as it was presented to me as a child, that that would not affect my life in a positive manner, just due to the external pressures and backlash and homophobia that I experienced as a child. I deal with depression, anxiety, and many other fundamentalist disorders on a daily basis. And I have been to therapy, and I benefited from true therapies that helped me deal with those disorders that came from the homophobia that I experienced as a child and to this day. And hearing the different stories today made me feel compelled to say that if I also went through some of the treatments that was presented to people with conversion therapy hopes, I do not think I would be here today due to the suicide ideation that I can only imagine be exponentiated in the same sense of the people who have presented today. So I support this bill, and I urge the support as well as somebody who believes that we all dream in some sort to be normal, but that this type of conversion therapy would only exacerbate the negative aspects of what I'm already experiencing. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up. Welcome to the committee.
Hey, Hunter. Good to see you.
You can state your name for the record and proceed.
Yes, please. Thank you. My name is Luca Joe Groppoli. I'm a citizen St. Paul here. Thank you so much for letting me share a minute of your time. I want to apologize to all the people who were injured. That's horrible that people should be hurt when they're seeking help. And I was a person who got help with a plethora of problems. And I grew up not knowing about God or religion. I really didn't care about God at the time. I spent most of my life as a lesbian, almost had a sex change and was transgender. And I found a lot of acceptance in the gay community, and that was very welcoming. And but I always felt like there was something still wrong in me, and I couldn't figure it out. And then one day somebody told me, it was a pastor who sat me down, and he told me, he said, this is God's plan, to be fruitful and multiply, to fulfill the earth and subdue it. And he said, if you continue to live this way, you could end up in hell. And I said, okay. I was mad, and I went and researched it, and I found out he might be true, but why not find out? So the one thing that I just found to be interesting is that I didn't have any desire to stop being gay, none whatsoever. I was happy in my 30-plus years of living as a lesbian with women. And but something happened to me when the girlfriend I was living with at the time made me go to church. And thank you. And when I got there, something happened in me, and I was met by a God who loved me. And it was in that love that I surrendered my life to him. And in that, I became a different person. And I don't struggle with same-sex attraction anymore. It's not about me trying to change. It's about giving my life to the one who says, I love you. Let's have something better in your life. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Can come on down. Thank you. Looks like we have time for two more people. So Welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record and proceed.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Jacob Thomas. I am here in support of this bill. Clearly was not planning to testify, but since we have time, I will say my kind of journey through conversion therapy and becoming an out and proud gay man took a different turn than some of my friends and colleagues here. I grew up in the South in a very religious home, like Junior and others who have testified here. Yet when I was forced to kind of deal with this with my parents at 15 when they found a love letter from my best friend, Cody, I lied through my teeth because I knew exactly what would happen. I knew that I would be sent to conversion therapies. And even with lying to my parents to ensure that I did not do that, I was still forced to go to the pastor of my church and explain to him why I was a happy heterosexual man, and explain to my principal at a Christian school that I was a proud, happy heterosexual man and that I didn't love men. That was completely false. To try and prove that I could be straight, I joined the military for 8 years and was honorably discharged in 2016 from the United States Air Force. And I also married a woman and tried to run a church. The harm that conversion therapy has on our lives as LGBTQ people is something that no matter how we think of this, we should not allow that to be a medical practice in this state. It is unconscionable that we are even debating unethical practices to be allowed into our medical system. So I urge you to please support HF 12, pass it on to the larger committee, or onto the larger body. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony, and we're going to come up on the last 2 minutes of the public testimony, so you get to bring us home. Welcome to the committee. You can state your name for the record and proceed.
Hi, my name is Jamie Maxey. I am a St. Paul resident, and I oppose this bill. I wasn't planning on sharing tonight, but I just kind of want to ask everybody who has ever kind of been stuck like inside of a closet, whether it's with your sexuality or whether it's with your gender, that you just take a step back and just think about that feeling. Like, how did you feel when you were questioning whether or not you were gay? Just think about that for a second. When I look back at that, I just remember being terrified. I remember Googling like what it meant to be gay. And like I really never like had anybody to like talk to, because I grew up in Western Nebraska, super conservative, rural area, and Google was my only answer. And I Googled it, and it told me I was born that way, and I was out and proud. I remember coming to Minnesota to meet up with my brother, and he lives in a Christian community, and what I expected was to get ridiculed, told I was going to hell because I was gay, that I was in a relationship with a woman. And what I experienced was totally different. I just felt loved and accepted. And I just want to apologize just on behalf of everybody who has had a negative and hurtful, abusive situation from this, that's not the way that God wants it. God wants you to know that you're loved and that he just wants to share his love for you. I feel strongly if you guys do pass this bill, you're going to be pushing people farther and farther back in that closet, or even pushing the people who've stepped out of homosexual attractions, that you would just be pushing them into a closet. You'd be making them afraid to share their stories because of consumer fraud or whatever it might be. So I just really want you guys to think about that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, and we've come to the end of the hour of public testimony. And at this time, we can move to member discussion. Questions from members? Seeing none. Oh, Representative Tice.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Cantrell. I told you I had concerns because I'm on the Central Minnesota Mental Health Board, and talked to the executive director quite a long time to kind of figure out what is this going to do to practices. And while he didn't think it would directly affect him, he's always he expressed a concern that things could be misinterpreted. And by that, I mean, you know, somebody could make a statement and somebody could say, oh, it sounds like conversion therapy. And with that regard, I'm just really saddened that a place that does such good like Central Minnesota Mental Health Center would have to have that kind of fear, maybe, in how they treat folks. I just think it's something we really do need to think about. And the language, your amendment did help that a little bit, but I think they're still concerned. And I just wanted you to know that going forward. Thank you.
Representative Cantrell, and you don't need to respond, but you may. That's all.
Representative Halverson, or excuse me, Chair Halverson, and Representative Tice, I appreciate you sharing those concerns. And would Dr. Sharmley have any feedback in that regard?
Welcome back to the committee. Just remind us of your name for the record and proceed.
Excuse me. My name is Dr. Margaret Sharmley, and I want to clear up some possible misconceptions about what this bill would do. As the American Psychological Association is a very big umbrella association and has divisions that include religious beliefs and practices. And so appropriate therapy does not tell people what they should be. It helps people explore some way to reconcile their distress and their feelings. So an appropriate therapist and mental health therapist would not tell somebody that you should be gay or you should be heterosexual. It simply allows people to explore their feelings and their conflicts. And I have to say that one of the hugest conflicts that people often come in the door with as a therapist is someone who is conflicted about their religious beliefs and their sexual orientation. It's a real concern, and those of us who practice ethically help people to sort of sort out and explore options in a way that helps them to better make peace and understand themselves. It doesn't say that you should be this or that. It helps people explore. So if people are saying that we encourage people to be gay, that's not true, nor do we encourage people to be straight. It's you know, who you are and how can you live with this. And the truth be known is that there are some people, this is a deeply held conflict for some people that doesn't get resolved, and some people do end up needing to live with some discomfort about this conflict within them. Other people find ways to come to peace with it, whether they accept their same gender or same sex feelings, or whether they change religions, or whether or not they don't act on their same gender feelings. There are many, many options for people to explore and come to grips with these feelings.
Thank you. Follow up, Representative Tice. Thank you. Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I also want to profoundly thank Representative Cantrell for bringing this bill and for all of the people who came here tonight and told their very difficult stories about their experiences. And I want to thank you on behalf of my friend Eric, who was the very first openly gay person I knew who was my own age and who died by suicide when I was a junior in high school and when he was a sophomore in high school. And suicide is a complicated thing, and there's never one answer. It's not that simple. Life isn't that simple. But I know, because I saw it with my own eyes, how badly Eric was hurt by the fact that he lived in a community that couldn't accept him for who he was. See, Eric and I both went to Coon Rapids High School, which is in Anoka Hennepin school districts, and at the time there was a practice in Anoka Hennepin that people who worked for the school district weren't allowed to teach that homosexuality was a valid lifestyle choice. And there was a deeply toxic atmosphere in the schools at that time. And some of you may know about that because actually after I graduated, the situation got worse to the point that there was a string of suicides, and the district made national news because it was a suicide contagion area. And so later I was privileged and honored to represent 5 students who sued the school district over this issue, well, not over conversion therapy, but over the issue of not lack of acceptance and preventing bullying and harassment. And I talked to so many kids in the course of that lawsuit about the disastrous consequences when someone's told that they are wrong for who they are and that there's something about them that needs to be fixed or changed. And so I couldn't be a stronger supporter of this bill. I'm so thrilled to vote for it in just a minute. I do want to clarify one thing for the committee and for anyone who's listening, because there was a lot of people who mentioned tonight in testimony the specter of criminal prosecution under Section 3 of this bill. Now, I'm a prosecutor. That's my profession. Section 3 does not create criminal liability. And it's just wrong to suggest that someone's going to go to jail under Section 3 here. And I really object to that. And because I don't think that that's what this bill is about, and I don't think that's what it should be about. But I will tell you that when I think back to my friend Eric, and when I close my eyes and I can see his face, I almost wish that it did, because I would love to have justice for him. I would love to have justice for all of the people who have been hurt for being told that they were wrong for who they were.
Representative Lish.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is one of those bills that a lot of times we come into committee and our minds aren't changed by anything. We come in with all the information. Y'all send us ahead of time. We read through it. Or maybe we even made a decision before we got elected. But tonight, I had my mind changed by both sides, actually. All you folks that came forward and testified about how conversion therapy worked for you, that was compelling. And I believe you, and I appreciate you coming in here bravely and stating that. But I also failed to understand how much I would appreciate those folks who came forward to tell us how damaged they were by conversion therapy. And I also, Representative Cantrell, I told you before that, I did have some reservations. Even though I thought conversion therapy was generally a bad idea based on the experiences we heard about, I thought that it was generally people's right in America to do bad ideas. However, this is restricted by folks younger than 18 or a vulnerable adult. And we have a storied history of enacting protections on behalf of those folks when we are in doubt. And the stories that I've heard from folks who experienced horrors of conversion therapy reminded me of experience that I remember when I was in college. I had some friends on campus who were in a group called the Rainbow Alliance, GLBTQ folks. And they were friends of mine, and they were political. And I was starting to get a little political back then. And one of the friends, AB was his name, was the president of the group. He said, we're all going out to Washington. This was 1992. And it was the March on Washington, I believe the second one, LGBTQ March on Washington. They had the AIDS quilt out on the Capitol Mall. And they said, we're going to go meet some representatives and senators and tell them about our issues. Do you want to come with? And I thought, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. It's political. I was kind of had a budding interest in politics at the time, and I didn't see any issue with it. And in the weeks leading up to leaving, we had this big 15-passenger van we're going to travel out there with. I found out that my family, my girlfriend at the time, my parents, my friends were freaking out big time. They were sure that I was going to go gay. Now, I'm still not sure what that means or what it meant, but they were absolutely convinced of it. I did not understand that that worry at the time because I had no sense of how that could happen. I have always been interested in girls, and that's how it was back then, and never had any same-sex attraction whatsoever. So I was intrigued by having everyone who was close to me completely freaking out about this. Now, I did not go through what a lot of you who experienced the negative aspects in conversion therapy in protracted periods of time, feeling alienated by your family and friends. But it was a short amount of time, and it was acute. And I'm still to this day amazed